Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
Ultimately, the big attitude you see right now is a lot of gratitude for the U.S. They've already put these weapons to work, and many, many more of them are on the way.
Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
Overnight, Ukraine came under attack from Russian aerial strikes, hitting critical infrastructure. Let's get more on that from Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. Joe, where are you, and how was your night?
Bob, good afternoon from Kyiv here in the capital, and it was calm here. It's been calm here for maybe about a week here in Kyiv, and but yet, of course, always some Russian fireworks throughout the country. I will say I think some of the biggest news today is that these ATACMS, these long-range weapons from the United States, some of them already arrived in Ukraine, and now it's been revealed that in the past week, Ukrainians used these long-range weapons to hit Russian targets in Crimea. This is pretty extraordinary. The Ukrainians were destroying multiple Russian missile systems, Russian air defense systems, which makes the Russian military very vulnerable in the Crimean Peninsula. Already the Ukrainians have been, sort of month by month chipping away at Russia's Navy in the Black Sea and at its ports in the Crimean Peninsula. And now it seems that more than 100 of these ATACMS were delivered to Ukraine. And it's important to note that these weapons are not part of the current aid package that President Biden signed yesterday or signed this week. So I think this has gotten missed in all these stories. This batch of ATACMS was promised by the White House in February, a few days after President Macron of France gave that very strong speech saying we're not afraid anymore, and about a week after the State of the Union. And so I think that detail has gotten lost. But what it shows, that the administration, did have and still does have power to send weapons to Ukraine, even without additional congressional approval. And so that did happen. But it's strange that a lot of the headlines, BBC and others, they're emphasized that this was a secret transfer as though this is something new. This is strange to me because the last time these ATACMS arrived in Ukraine in October, the White House approved the sending of a few of them in October, and all the headlines made a big deal of the secrecy. But even that arrival and this current arrival, these were publicly announced by the White House. And of course, every single time any weapon or ammunition or even humanitarian aid comes here, it's always in secret. They don't have trumpets and fanfare because the Russians will target it. So that's a strange way that story is being told. But it also underscores, the fact that this small batch has already arrived and Ukrainians have immediately used them to great effect. I think somehow there's got to be a PR strategy here because it is being made clear from Washington that many more, perhaps even more than 1,000 of these ATACMS will be on the way to Ukraine. A few of them even arriving this week. So that could really give Ukraine quite a boost. But still, there's a sticking point. So the ATACMS that arrived here were used in Crimea, which is sovereign Ukrainian territory that the Russians have occupied since 2014. And this is a change. The White House previously was not okay with Ukraine even hitting places in Crimea. Now it seems, it's quite clear that Washington has given its approval, but still Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, made clear, I think it was today, maybe yesterday, American time, he made clear that any weapons from the U.S. may not be used on actual Russian soil. And so this is still a sticking point, and it means Ukrainians are going to, for that project, they're going to have to get weapons from other countries, or they're going to have to continue using Ukrainian-made drones to hit Russian oil facilities, which also does not make Washington happy. But as long as Ukrainians are not able to hit places within Russia, cities like Kharkiv remain incredibly vulnerable because they're so close to the border, and Ukrainians are not permitted to fight back. And in fact, there's another strange undercurrent I've been noticing for a while, whether it's in the Daily Telegraph, British newspaper the other day, or from security experts here in Ukraine. And they're not always right. In fact, they're often wrong. But there's a new sort of undercurrent that something bad is going to happen to Kharkiv. And I think this might be Russian propaganda pushing it. When I speak with people from Kharkiv, they take no notice of it and they just continue with it. But there is a sense, so Kharkiv is vulnerable and the Russians are trying to push this idea that everyone should be scared. But I think ultimately the big attitude you see right now is a lot of gratitude for the U.S. They've already put these weapons to work, and many, many more of them are on the way.
Joe, your mention of, and you often do this, talk about stories that you feel are missed by the media. That reminds me about this email I want to share with you. Hi, Bob and staff. PBS NewsHour is in Ukraine and reported on the bombing that Joseph experienced and that he shared with you. He should connect with those people while they're there. We really appreciate your show and how you've enabled him to report the news about what's happening in Ukraine every day and not letting him go, hoping that we can hang in there with him through you to show, if nothing more, our support for his quest to tell as truthful as possible what he and the Ukrainian people are experiencing in this terrible, terrible war. Thank you, Dawn from Elgin, Illinois. Joseph, do you talk to reporters who are there? Do you try to fill them in on what's going on in your view?
Yeah, I mean, always you run, you get to know everyone as you travel the country. You see the same people, at different places at different times. It's sort of amazing who you run into. There is a great sense of collegiality among many of the reporters. I do communicate with a lot of them, and that's part of the. I mean, you see so many fascinating people that come here from all over the world, and it takes a bit of courage for each one of them. So much respect to them. And speaking of reporting the reality and the truth, I should notice that there is the past day or so, there's a lot of unrest in Ukrainian society. The foreign ministry of Ukraine announced that it is suspending all consular services for Ukrainian men living abroad between ages 18 and 60 if they have not registered with sort of the equivalent of the draft committee. This applies even to people who lived abroad for a long time, even well before Russia's full-scale invasion. And I can tell that Ukrainian society is extremely upset about this. Even people I know who sort of Ukrainians I know who refuse to speak with Ukrainians who they think left the country sort of for illegitimate reasons. Even those Ukrainians are angry that the government would suspend, sort of consular and passport services for Ukrainians who are not living in, who've left the country. So I think that shows you the deep sense of civil rights and justice that Ukrainians have. Even if they're angry at some of these people, they do not think it's right to deprive them of their passports. And this is a huge topic that almost everyone I know is talking about in Ukraine today. People are very frustrated with this new policy.
I can understand that. Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine, thank you as always, Joe, and I hope you stay safe. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Bob. Until tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Єбать.